Hello and welcome to this week's edition of World Today, where we will be focusing on one of the worst impacts of climate change that the world is witnessing today. In fact, weather is the top talk among Britons in the United Kingdom, with temperatures hitting 40 degrees Celsius, far more extensive than any hot spell that the country has ever witnessed. It is not just the United Kingdom. In fact, the whole of Europe is facing the worst climate crisis. Portugal, Spain, Italy, Germany, with temperatures hovering around 38 degrees Celsius, it is a summer of discomfort, with governments asking citizens to stay indoors. Here is a report.
Raging wildfires in Spain. Narrow escape from the wrath of nature. A train surrounded by wildfire as travellers sit stunned. Melting airport tarmacs in the United Kingdom. Showers under Paris's world-famous Eiffel Tower.
Chaude.
Anormalement chaude.
Anormalement chaude, ouais, c'est le mot.
Ouais.
C'est le mot. Nous, on vient du sud, on vient de Montpellier. Et on a à peu près les mêmes températures en ce moment, mais c'est vrai que c'est plus vivable dans le sud en fait qu'ici. On dirait que c'est vraiment un four, quoi. Un four, c'est hallucinant.
This is Europe, as it sizzles in record-breaking, searing temperatures. The United Kingdom has created an unwelcome record with temperature crossing 40 degrees Celsius, a first ever for the country. French capital Paris hit a little under 41 degrees Celsius. While the ferocious heat wave has taken a drastic turn as wildfires in France, Portugal, Spain and Greece forces residents out of their homes. In southern and western Europe, over 1,700 people have allegedly died from the heat. Scientists have warned that this European heat is a signal that climate change will make heat waves more intense and frequent. From Paris to Madrid to London, Mother Nature is wreaking havoc. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, Europe and the West is reeling under tremendous heat wave. Why so? Lack of political will, inaction by leaders, and the fact that this generation, our generation, has done not very much for the future generations and saving for the future generations. Representing the future generation, I'm being joined by climate activist Louisa Neubauer. Louisa, many thanks for joining us. Pardon me if I got your second name a little wrong, but the fact is that the world is today grappling with climate change, and yet you see the political leadership, world leaders, doing very little. The fact that you focused on climate, what do you think are the reasons for the heat wave, the kind of climate change phenomenon that we're witnessing, and your views on what the world has done so far?
Wonderful question. I'm so happy to be joining you here. So what we're seeing right now across the globe, really, and including Europe, vast parts of Europe, we're seeing a heat wave that many of us have never experienced before. These are extreme temperatures that younger generations, have never witnessed. And it is interesting, coming from a country like Germany that is considered very rich and also not very vulnerable to climate change. We are seeing, fires here, we're seeing the heat, we're seeing the droughts, and people are commenting upon and saying, that is not Greek, that is not India, that is Germany. And it is interesting how the heat wave really changes the perception of, where is climate change happening and where isn't it. And we're seeing, it's on every part of the world. And I mean, we're still talking about a very privileged situation that we're in countries like Germany, but also here we cannot cope with the heat. People are suffering, people are dying from that heat, and there is no political plan right now out there that could protect people and society appropriately.
what's really wrong with this world, Louisa, when it comes to the most basic thing not being looked into? They're looking at development, they look at how manufacturing should increase, but the most basic thing that is important for one's survival is not being looked into. What do you think is actually wrong over here?
Well, I think there's a quite straightforward answer, is that tackling the climate crisis and actually protecting people and their livelihoods would mean getting into a one-on-one fight with the fossil fuel industry. And that is a very industry that is behind much of the wealth and the growth of many, parts of the world, most outstandingly, of course, of the Western parts of the world. And so I think politicians for many years now have chosen to rather delay, deny, or play down the dangers of the climate crisis.
But finally, before I let you go, what's your next step of action? Your country, your part of the world is seeing the worst ever. There are red alerts that have been sounded to not go out, to not venture out. It's that hot. We've seen roads melting over. So what's your next step?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You see me sitting here with wet hair, which is what I do to cope with the heat, to make sure that my head isn't getting too warm. And I'm a very young person, so I'm thinking of my grandmother here. I'm thinking of my younger nephews, who will have just much harder time to cope with the heat. And what this needs to be, this heat wave that we're seeing across Europe, really must be that red line where people and governments stop fooling along and claiming that the climate crisis isn't there yet, that it is bad enough to act, and that it's actually an elitist problem that will just, be a thing for those who already care about the climate. Now, this is a crisis that is the most dangerous for those who, of course, the least of it, globally spoken, but also within societies like Germany, and it is taking people's lives.
On that note, Louisa, only hoping and wishing that your generation and the generations to come see what we were blessed to see. Live in a world that we were blessed with and have been responsible to ruin in many ways and one, some parts of that beautiful world. So only hoping that we recover sooner than later. We understand things sooner than later. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Six-time Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has been elected President of Sri Lanka as the nation grapples with unprecedented economic crisis, high levels of inflation, and masses still protesting against Ranil taking charge.
As Sri Lankan Navy personnel in speedboats patrolled the lake around Parliament building in Colombo, a crucial election was underway inside the building. Sharp at 10 a.m, the process started with the announcement to elect the new President of Sri Lanka after the unceremonious ouster of Gotabaya Rajapaksa last week. Of the three in the race to be President, Ranil Wickremesinghe was seen as front-runner after leader of the opposition Sajith Premadasa stepped aside in favour of Dallas Allahaperuma. The latter was seen as inching closer to the 113 mark in the 225-member parliament. And just a little before 12 noon, the announcement was made. Ranil Wickremesinghe, with the vote of 134 MPs, was way above the 113 halfway mark. His nearest rival, Dallas Allahaperuma, got the vote of 82 MPs, and the left leader Anura Kumara Dissanayake had the support of only 3 members of parliament.
Honourable Member of Parliament Ranil Wickremesinghe has received 134 votes.
Ranil Wickremesinghe, who has been 6 times Premier of Sri Lanka and entered politics in 1977, the President-elect struck a conciliatory tone, seeking a national effort to rebuild the island nation.
The economy of the country today is in a very difficult place. Young men and women are asking for change in the system. There are many problems in the world and we must proceed without getting caught in them. To go forward, we need to come up with a new program. What the people are asking of us is not the old politics. The Parliament must unite in the face of these issues.
However, the road ahead, to put it mildly, is full of challenges. Sri Lanka is virtually bankrupt, unable to repay loans. Prices of all essentials are skyrocketing, and despite standing in long queues for days, petrol and diesel remain a huge challenge. As the new president prepares to take over presidency of a troubled nation, Wickremesinghe has to not only revive the economy, but also convince the angry street that he is the right man for the job.
Having secured a lion's share of votes, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, the president of Sri Lanka, now leaving the parliament. In the 225-member parliament, Ranil Wickremesinghe got 134 votes. Of the 225 votes, 219 were valid, 2 abstained, 4 were rejected. Now, those who stood against him, for example, Dallas Alaha Peruma, he got 82 votes, and Anura Kumara Disanaike got only 3 votes. As he leaves the parliament, the challenges for the Sri Lankan president are immense. His biggest challenge remains to revive the economy. A major challenge also remains is to get the angry street back to work, back to their homes, to be able to once again put Sri Lanka back on its feet. With cameraman Kripal Singh at the Sri Lankan Parliament in Colombo, Sri Lanka, Gaurav Sawant for India.
In a rare international visit, Russian President Vladimir Putin was in Iran. This is only the second trip that he's taken since the invasion of Ukraine in February. While the West is calling it a desperate act, is it one? Or is it Moscow's strategy to consolidate its position when it comes to Turkey's decision to either block or allow Finland and Sweden's membership into the NATO, and more importantly, on the issue of Syria, consolidating Iran and Russia's position? Here is a report.
The much talked about visit, Putin met Turkish and Iranian leaders in Tehran. The trip marks Putin's first face-to-face meeting with the leaders since the Russia-Ukraine conflict began. The trilateral summit among Vladimir Putin, Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Ibrahim Raisi was closely watched by all across the world. The leaders discussed a deal aimed at allowing the resumption of Ukraine's Black Sea grain exports. Also high on the agenda will be peace talks over the war in Syria, where Moscow and Tehran have opposed Turkish threats to increase military activity.
I would like to thank you for your mediation efforts, for providing a platform for negotiations on food issues, on issues of grain transportation over the Black Sea. Not all the issues are resolved, but there is a movement forward, and that is good.
Concerns of Turkey aligned with what Erdogan's decision would be on the fate of Finland and Sweden's recent application to become a NATO member. Erdogan had warned the 2 Nordic states to keep their end of the bargain of extraditing wanted people back to Turkey. Turkey is particularly keen on the handover of individuals it considers linked to the Kurdistan Workers' Party, considered a terror group by the EU, US and UK. This is non-negotiable.
We see that the PKK, YPG, PYD terrorist organization is taking steps to consolidate the division in Syria. With foreign support it is receiving. It is impossible to expect Turkey to remain inactive, irresponsive, as this terrorist organization continues its separatist agenda. I hear from you, my dear friends, that you understand Turkey's legitimate security concerns. I am thankful for this, but words alone are not a cure for wounds. The adopted joint statement reaffirmed the commitment to strengthening trilateral cooperation between Russia, Iran and Turkey in the interests of normalization of the situation in Syria.
Kremlin is keen to show that international sanctions have failed to isolate Russia, the world's largest country, and that some of its friends are sticking around like Turkey and Iran. Apart from trilateral, Putin held bilateral meetings with the Turkish and Iranian leadership. The Russian president received endorsement for the Ukraine war from Iran's supreme leader, claiming NATO would have eventually started the conflict. Khamenei in a statement said NATO would know no bounds if the way was open to it, and if it was not stopped in Ukraine, it would start the same war using Crimea as an excuse. Putin's trip, which came just days after US President Joe Biden visited Israel and Saudi Arabia, sending a strong message to the West about Moscow's plans to forge closer strategic ties with Iran, China and India in the face of Western sanctions.
Now the race to 10 Downing Street is in its final lap. In the final ballot among the Conservative MPs voting for a party chief, Rishi Sunak secured 137 votes as opposed to Liz Truss getting 113. But the final round will include membership of the entire party, which is about 160,000 members, and the result might not be the same. Here's the report.
Former UK Chancellor Rishi Sunak and Foreign Secretary Liz Truss will face off in the race for the 10 Downing Street. In the final ballot among Conservative Party MPs to select the next party chief, Rishi Sunak made it to the top with 137 votes, while Liz Truss followed closely behind with 113 votes. Penny Mordaunt, who garnered just 105 votes, has been eliminated from the race. As the results were announced, Sunak appeared confident of winning the last lap. Sunak pledged to rebuild the economy and reunite the country.
Well, we've just got the results and wow, thank you so much to everyone for your support. I'm so humbled by it and I'm delighted that we got to this stage in the contest. I won't let you down. I'll work as hard as I can to get our message out to the country. We need to restore trust, rebuild the economy and reunite our country. I'm confident that we can do that, and we've got a really positive message to take out to all our members now. Crucially, who is the best person to beat Keir Starmer and the Labour Party at the next election? I believe I'm the only candidate who can do that, and that's what we're going to talk to all our members about now. But thanks for all your support so far. Please come and join the team. Sign up at readyforrishi.com, and I hopefully see you on the road soon.
The fight, however, won't be easy for Sunak. Polls are favouring Liz Truss to win the race to become the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
When we say about the Britain, it's like a combination of the multicultural, and this is the proven that we are getting the fairly chance even if we are in a politics. So yes, it is very inspirational for all of us, and we will support Rishi for that.
There is a connection between us and him. We're all coloured, and he has been able to achieve tremendous things, which truly just inspires us. And there is no doubt in saying that he'd have our support.
What could work for Truss is the support of Boris Johnson, who made his last Parliament speech as Prime Minister in trademark Bojo style.
I've helped to get this country through a pandemic and helped save another country from barbarism. And frankly, that's enough to be going on with. Mission largely accomplished. For now, I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank all the wonderful staff of the House of Commons. I want to thank all my friends and colleagues. I want to thank my rival friend opposite, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank everybody here, and hasta la vista, baby.
In the next stage, Conservative Party members will pick either Sunak or Truss as their party chief and hence the Prime Minister. The result of the last lap will be known on September 5th.
Who goes to win the premiership title really is a battleground that will be played out in the next 5 weeks. 5th of September is when Britain should have its new leader of Tory party and also the Prime Minister who will go into elections in the next 18 months unless he decides to call for elections now. Lavina Tandon for India Today from Westminster, London.
That's all in this show, but before I go, I leave you with these last words of former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson to his fellow parliamentarians as also the successor for his post. Listen in and keep watching India Today.
I want to thank my right honourable friend, and I want to use the last few seconds, Mr. Speaker, to give some words of advice to my successor, whoever he or she may be. Number one, stay close to the Americans, stick up for the Ukrainians, stick up for freedom and democracy everywhere. Cut taxes and deregulate wherever you can to make this the greatest place to live and invest, which it is. I love the Treasury, but remember that if we'd always listened to the Treasury, we wouldn't have built the M25 or the Channel Tunnel. Focus on the road ahead. Focus on the road ahead, but always remember to check the rear-view mirror. And remember, above all, it's not Twitter that counts. It's the people that sent us here. And yes, the last few years have been the greatest privilege of my life. And it's true that I helped to get the biggest Tory majority for 40 years and a huge realignment in UK politics, Mr. Speaker. We've transformed our democracy and restored our national independence, as my right honourable friend says. I've helped to get this country through a pandemic and helped save another country from barbarism. And frankly, that's enough to be going on with. Mission largely accomplished. For now, I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank all the wonderful staff of the House of Commons. I want to thank all my friends and colleagues. I want to thank my right honourable friend opposite, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank everybody here, and hasta la vista, baby. Thank you.